I'm Darius McDermott from FundCalibre. Today I'm with Karen C., co-manager of the Baillie Gifford Japan Income Growth Fund. Morning, Karen.
Good morning.
Tell me why you decided to launch this fund, because Baillie Gifford already has several other Japanese products.
Sure. We actually started thinking about this strategy more than 13 years ago. And back then when we looked at the market to see if this strategy would be a viable product, we decided actually the market wasn't quite ready for it. So not many Japanese companies actually pay a decent dividend back then. So we can't really put together a portfolio that has high quality growth businesses, but at the same time pay out a high enough yield to justify the product. So we parked the idea for about 10 years and then we revisited it about 3-4 years ago when we started seeing quite encouraging changes happening in the Japanese market. So some of these are the Corporate Governance Code and Stewardship Code that was introduced back in 2014 and 15. What that means is that the Japanese government and the regulators are really encouraging Japanese companies to rethink how they think about shareholder returns, how they actually deploy the capital. And one of the key changes actually from the start of that is they have to introduce at least one independent directors on the board. It's perhaps quite surprising to many people, but as recent as 2010, half of the listed companies do not have a single independent directors on the board. So what that means is that if they don't want to pay any dividends or pay a very low level dividends, no one can actually challenge the management about how they're actually running the business and the disregard for shareholders. So that has kind of kickstarted a lot of the changes that then came afterwards. So we were quite encouraged and decided to launch the strategy July 2016.
In this fund, you invest in 4 types of stock: structural growth, growth stalwarts, special situations, and cyclical growth. Would you give us a couple of opportunities of favoured stocks or really interesting ideas at the moment, please?
Sure. So in the secular growth buckets, we have a company called SBI Holdings. So this is the largest online brokerage in Japan. It's been growing very fast. Because of the low-cost model, it doesn't have any physical branches, has a very eccentric founder with loads of ideas in terms of how to disrupt the industry. Is now about 40% market share of the online brokerage industry, and is still growing very quickly. And we see the growth opportunity to be continue to expand going forward. The interesting thing about SBI Holding is that not only is it growing very fast, but actually is still chucking out a lot of dividends on its way. So its total dividend payout ratio is about 40%. It's something that is quite unusual if you compare it to other markets. Another example would be a company called Unicharm. So this is the feminine care product and nappies maker. They are founder family-run business, so a very long-term thinking management. They're targeting a very long-term growth opportunity. They went into China very early on, 20 years ago. They started expanding into Southeast Asia to take advantage of the increased penetration of nappies usage. So a lot of the growth is really driven by an increase in middle-class population as well as just the demographics, because they not only make nappies for babies, but they also make adult incontinence care. So as Asia age as a whole, as we know that is happening, a lot more people will need these adult incontinence care, and Unicharm is very well positioned within that. So we're very excited about a growth opportunity facing Unicharm. And this is also a company that is paying out a lot in dividend as well. The total payout ratio is about 50%. So half of the earnings they actually return back to shareholders.
Where are you seeing opportunities across the Japanese market broadly? What sort of areas are looking interesting and exciting at the moment?
When we try to think about opportunities, we try to think about the long-term trends for growth investors, especially when there's change in the market. When I say market, I mean Japan. Then there is opportunity for us to exploit. So the key trends that we kind of seeing in our portfolios at the moment will be automation. This is a particularly topical area because a lot of people are quite worried about the cyclicality of automation stocks. But actually, if you look at the long-term opportunity, that we know that there is a aging demographics like I mentioned earlier, but also overall outside of Japan as well, that there are a lot more move towards automation. So if you think about the opportunity in 10 years, 20 years, these are actually quite exciting area to look for stock ideas. Another one is internet. So related to SBI Holdings, I mentioned earlier that a lot of the disruption we're seeing in Japan comes from the internet space. Japan actually lags behind many markets in terms of the internet penetration for many different industries. So we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurial companies coming through, and we're keeping an eye out for those as well. So yeah, I think those are the key themes that we can see in our portfolios.
Karen, thank you very much. For more information on the Baillie Gifford Japan Income Growth Fund, please visit fundcalibre.com.